To everyone, we are so happy to see you on behalf of European Coalition for Fighting TB. Welcome to the third webinar from the series of ABC of TB activists. And you know that we hold these seminars these webinars focused on the most relevant issues, topics for civil society to fight TB, and we try to make it as practical as possible so that you could use this information and skills in your work. And using technical functions of Zoom, you can follow the instructions that you will now see in the chat box. We have simultaneous interpretation today, Russian and English. Here we have two interpreters, outstanding interpreters, Vladimir Kaplun and Anna Stemkovskaya, and hopefully the next hour will be very helpful for you. As you could see in the announcement today, we suggest that we discuss a very trendy topic, and that is GPT chat that you will be able to use in your work, and we are actively using it in our team, and it is really very helpful for us. It helps us save time and energy to implement various activities, and we will speak more about it with Maria Chuprinska, and she is a very experienced project manager. And thank you for participating in our webinar and that you've agreed to share your experience and knowledge with us today. So I suggest that we proceed with the presentation, and I pass the floor to Maria. Thank you, Alexandra. Hello, dear colleagues, and I'm so happy to see you all today at this webinar. I'm Maria Chuprinskaya. I'm project manager. I have more than 10 years of experience in the field of social projects. I am on my maternity leave, but I still try to keep pace with the modern trends that can be helpful in the field of management. And Olesya, I ask you to start your presentation, our presentation now. It is on? Not yet. We will start it now. As you can see, today we are going to speak about ChatGPT. And let's switch to the next slide in the English version of the presentation. Okay. So today we are going to speak about the tool that may be your assistant, which confidently is entering the world of project management, above all, in order to simplify our daily tasks. And today we will discuss what ChatGPT is, basics of ChatGPT. We will speak about question engineering. I mean, how to formulate a request in such a way that you get clear answers. We will also speak about how routine tasks can be automated using ChatGPT, and also how ChatGPT can help you learn new skills and how it can be helpful when we prepare project proposals, which is very important. This is a big part of work of a project manager. Let's proceed with the next slide. We will start with the basics. What is ChatGPT? It is artificial intelligence and language modeling. It is an assistant in all aspects of your work as a project manager if you use it correctly. This is a super smart machine that was developed by OpenAI company, and thus it was developed based on GPT-3.5 architecture, hence the name. And it can communicate and understand all of our requests, both in English and in a lot of other languages. It is not just an application or a software where you ask a question and get the answer, as in Google or from robotics. This is a unique algorithm that is learning and evolving when communicating with us, always getting smarter and better with every interaction with the user. ChatGPT can be your trusted advisor. It can be a personal assistant, and even it can creatively inspire us. But the most amazing thing about ChatGPT is that, well, again, let me reiterate that it evolves after every dialogue, and it gets better every day because there are a lot of dialogues, and each time the answers become smarter, better, and more specific. Next slide. And let's summarize. So ChatGPT was trained using a lot of data. It uses GPT-3.5 architecture, hence the name, and it has learned based on more than 570 gigabytes of text. And you understand that that's a lot. No human can analyze such huge amount of information. Then ChatGPT training required huge computing power, and this is also due to that. So if a lot of people use ChatGPT at the same time, hopefully it will work for us today, that it may not even be operational because even that computing power may be insufficient to address all the requests. Also, some of the data used for training the GDP chat was collected on the internet, but it's important that when ChatGPT was developed, the efforts were made to avoid including personal confidential information into the training set. If you want to read about ECTP on ChatGPT, it will share this information with you. But if you ask information about individual employees of the organization, you will not get this information because it is, if not confidential, but well, it does not use specific individual data. So there is nothing to be afraid of. The goal of creating GPT chat was not only to create an algorithm that can answer questions and provide information, as I mentioned above all, this is about development of a creative and useful tool that can help people in a variety of fields. We are going to discuss that later. In particular, we are going to speak about project management today, and also training of GPT chat was held in as an iterative process. It means that there were several steps while it was developed, and each of these steps, now there's Chat GPT 3.5 and there is Chat GPT 4. So each is the step that included pre-training on a large amount of data and then retraining on a narrower data set. Why? In order that ChatGPT became a more precise, a better algorithm where you ask your specific question. And ChatGPT is part of open AI efforts to create and develop open AI models to make AI accessible and useful for as many people as possible. We will also speak about that today when we enter ChatGPT, but apart from text assistant, ChatGPT, free of charge or with the minimum payment, can help you produce visuals with the help of AI and even write codes for your websites. These are three key pillars, and we will speak about that. Next slide. And now I have this question to you. Do you know what the most common disease among project managers is? If you have some options, ideas, do write them in the chat box. What's the greatest issue of project managers? Try to recall all of your sleepless nights and hard working days. Deadlines, that's close, burnout. But you know, this is a consequence rather. Okay, let me not take more time. Thank you for these options. Insomnia, right? Procrastination, that's my problem recently. But ChatGPT is very helpful there. So for my option is that it is OPO, obsessive project overload. And well, it looks like a joke, but it emphasizes that ChatGPT can provide you with practical support. Scoliosis, by the way, that's a good option. Thank you, Romelu. Well, there, ChatGPT cannot help you, I guess, but it will help you to allocate more time to focus on your client. So how could that be helpful for of all of us so that we avoid OPO? We can use the capacity, fundamental capacity of ChatGPT to analyze a lot of data and provide recommendations and generate the required content. And with the simple request to ChatGPT, you can get a structured and detailed activities plan, and we can ask it to take into account some phases and terms and resources. Using these requests, we can do all the routine job that takes a lot of our time and efforts. And actually, we can get the structure, the required structure of the plans with description of possible risks in just 5 minutes if we ask the questions right. And of course, in the same way, you can use ChatGPT, and this is how I like using it, to make some decisions. It's not like ChatGPT tell me what to do, but rather when you don't know how to move on, where you get stuck in a certain situation where you don't have new ideas because we are lost in the routine. And in that case, we can also go to ChatGPT, and it can analyze data and detect potential risks and suggest optimal ideas to address certain situations. It doesn't mean that we need to obey it like 100%, but at least it can interrupt our procrastination and help us deal with a certain tasks without wasting a lot of time. So based on what we have already mentioned, it is obvious that ChatGPT can be a revolution in the world of project management if we use this tool correctly. To me, this is already a revolution in the field of project manager because I am using ChatGPT very extensively, and sometimes I think that maybe I should do it even less, but still we are short of time, and that's very
несколько моментов, так как хоть он и делает...
But there are a few points, even though it makes our work easier, better, creative, we need to remember important things. First of all, the English version of the ChatGPT works the best. Always when you go to ChatGPT, you can ask it to translate the text into any other language, but it is better to make a first request in English. Or when you make a request, you can write this question in Russian or another language, but ask the ChatGPT to analyze that in English and provide a response in your language. So that kind of answer will be clearer, smarter, better, and then you can use it. Okay, the next point is also very important, is that ChatGPT knows nothing about the events that have happened after 2021 because it gets trained on the data collected only before that. So you cannot ask ChatGPT for statistics of 2023, but you can find some statistics and that is current, and you need then to make an analysis of that out of that whole list of data in the WHO report. So you need to just include this information in the request window to provide this information to ChatGPT, and you will get a brief resume or some conclusions of the analysis of this information, but you just cannot ask statistics for 2023. Maybe it can produce something, but the probability that it will be correct information is low. Another thing also is important, because when people hear about artificial intelligence, robots around us, we will lose our jobs and stuff like that. Fortunately, it's not so, because ChatGPT cannot replace anyone from your team, but it can become your personal assistant that helps you to save time by performing routine tasks quickly. And it's not something like unusual. It's just a neuronic network, automated network that can analyze a lot of data in a very brief period of time. Something that even our assistants or we managers cannot do physically. The next slide, please. And before we switch to the examples, we will now learn about the structure of the ChatGPT. We will try to enter it and learn more, but I will show it to you now because I hope we will not overload the site and we'll be able to join it all together. So that's what the site looks like after you register. And you see on the screen there is this button, new chat plus new chat. Yes, the interface is in English, but after you press the new chat in the left upper corner, you can start the conversation with ChatGPT with your questions, your requests. Yeah, next slide, please. And after that, in the bottom line, you indicate your request in any language you want, and then you submit it to ChatGPT by pressing this green arrow. So I wanted to make an example of the proposal idea with the structure in the field of advocacy. Down the next slide, you see that it provides some results. So you'd see not the whole answer was present here, but it just provides you with a structure, something that I requested, a brief summary of what should be there. And if you don't have an idea, for example, sometimes I don't have the idea about outputs and outcomes and what to do with that and how to formulate those. And in this case, you can just ask it like, the point 3 here is problem statement. You say, please give me examples of problem statements for such projects, and yeah, provide some examples really. And so you can ask it to detailize these things for you and to provide examples. Next slide, please. Now we are going to switch to more specific things that will help to simplify the work with the ChatGPT to get more specific responses. And for that, you need to use very simple rules. You just need to remember about those. When you work with the ChatGPT, you need to be specific. You need to use simple language, ask one question at a time. You need to provide context, indicate the format or detailization level of the answer. That's like a very important rule. And you need to avoid yes or no questions. And of course, you need to experiment and adjust the questions if you got the answer that is not to your liking. So let us learn more about these rules and practice our requests. Can we see the next slide, please? And I would like to ask to start the poll meanwhile. Now, on the screen, you will see the options of the question, and please choose the one that you would choose if you had to ask something like that to the ChatGPT. Okay, nice. Cool. Now you see we have already, yeah, it understood something. 80% success according to this study is what we have. I suggest that we wait for another half a minute because only 70% of the participants have answered so far. And the results, well, they don't see them yet. So it's only me who sees that. Okay, nice. Now 70%. Great. Let us be more active. That there are no right or wrong answers. You will get answers to all this. Anything you ask from ChatGPT, it will provide the answer to it. So do not be too worried about the correctness. Well, I think we can. Okay, 3/4 of the people have voted, so we are ending the poll and see the results. Yeah, right. So do we see it? Yeah, nice. So we see that 79% of the people have voted for the most correct option of question. Yeah, they are all correct, but the question is what you want to get as a result. Why this one is the best one? Why it is better to use this option? Because here you provide clear details about the target audience, that these are adults, about the type of tuberculosis, like it's drug susceptible tuberculosis, specific information that we want to get. We want the current standards of treatment, and if it's also clear, this helps ChatGPT to understand the context, which is also one of our rules, and provide a more specific answer. I think we can stop sharing the results of this one and let us switch to the next slide. Now, this is the correct answer. And the next rule that we have. The next rule is use simple language. Okay, ChatGPT can understand complex language, difficult wording, but it is better to use simple and concise questions because clear and direct questions are more likely to produce accurate answers. So everything is simple, yeah. Now, next slide. Tanya, please start the poll. We'll vote once again based on the rules of using the detailized formulations. Please choose the best option. Great. We're very consistent with that, just like in the previous one. Yeah, I think we can share the results already. No, for sure. We've reached that percentage again. Now you should be able to see the results. Yeah, you see that a good specific question in the is in the third one when we ask about children up to 5 years. Yeah, we need to be as detailed as possible in our question. So providing the context, pediatric tuberculosis, indicating how old the children need to be. The chat GPT understands the general context of the question and provides the accurate question focusing on specific symptoms characteristic for a specific age group. Now, Adam, I think we can close this and we can get to the next slide. Now, another important thing is you need to ask one question at a time. That is, instead of combining several questions in one sentence, you need to split them into separate questions, and thus ChatGPT will find it easier to focus on a specific topic and provide more specific answers. We are not going to have there are polls for that, but I will just show an example on a slide. I'll let the next slide, please. Okay, so there are two options. I've called it not clear request. So that help me formulate the requirements to functionality of a mobile app and its user design interface. Also tell me about possibility of integration with a medical database and determine the technical requirements to the user feedback system. That's a very long question. There will be a long answer and it will go as a one block of text. And if we split it into separate questions, like you can use the bullet points or the points like 1, 2, 3. Yeah, please help me formulate, please provide information and so on. So you can ask it to provide you a list of answers. So better split your request into several. Next slide, please. Now, this is something that we have already spoken about today. That's about providing the context. If your request is based on some specific previous information, it's important to indicate that in your request, and it will help you avoid misunderstanding and make sure that the answer addresses the context. Today, we're going to speak about the examples where the context would have been important. The next slide, please. Yeah, here again, we just cannot hold a poll, so we will provide it just as an example. On the slide, you see the example that if we ask a question with the context, the ChatGPT will help the project manager to quickly come up with a simple, concise requirements to this mobile app. So basically, that's terms of reference, and make it simpler to create the TOR and get a better understanding of the goal of the project. But if you ask without the context, the answer will be less specific, and you will have to work on that more. But we are going to use ChatGPT for a different reason, to avoid working manually, or to work manually as little as possible. Next slide, please. The next rule is the level, the format or the level of detailization you prefer. I mentioned that it's important, but yeah, why? Because if you answer this question, ask this question correctly, and you ask for a specific structure, it will be simpler both for you and the ChatGPT. The answer will be structurized, it will be clear. And if you have some preferences about the format and the level of detailization, make it clear to the ChatGPT. For example, you can ask I'll ask some brief explanation, step-by-step explanation, specific examples, and so on. And the ChatGPT will provide the necessary answer. Next slide, please.
And now we are going to have another poll based on the rule about the detailing level. Please choose the best format of the query, option query, based on the rules of the required format or detailing level of detail. So I believe that we can share that now. Even though I swapped the correct answer, the correct option, everybody has managed well. So the correct option is providing a short summary of the key risk factors in the respective region. So we indicate the format, a brief summary, a level of detail. This is focused on multi-resistant TB. And we also indicate that this is in the regions with high TB burden. And we send it to ChatGPT to get the answer that will be in line with our preferences. I'm sorry, but there is a construction site next to my house, so I cannot get rid of the sounds, and I hope that you can hear me. If there are problems, you can write in the chat. We don't hear any interference. It's just that it's been very loud now, and I was afraid that nobody can hear me. Now let's go to the next slide. Now we proceed with discussion of what's directly linked to project management and how ChatGPT can help us prepare project funding applications. So we will discuss several important stages, and we'll start with preparing the project proposal. ChatGPT can provide us guidance on structuring and developing offer a proposal. And when we prepare the proposal, we can share details of our project, and ChatGPT can help us clarify these aspects, highlight key points, and suggest improvements. We can ask it to make our proposal more compelling. And of course, we need to read that all. We do not just copy paste, but believe me, I checked the suggestions by ChatGPT, and we can see the examples. Give an example of project proposal in the field of advocacy projects to combat TB in EECA region, provide the structure for project proposal and detailed description of the project. Further on, you can ask it to come up with a specific example, because you can go into a lower level of detail. So if you already have a description, you can share this description. Based on that, it can structure it as a project proposal in the form as you need it. If you already have the form from the funding organization, you can indicate bullet points or items for this form. Let's go to the next slide. This is my favorite part, and this is editing. All in all, ChatGPT can help reviewing and editing your offer. It can help you spot grammatical error mistakes, improve sentence structure, suggest alternative wording, and make sure that the proposal is written in a professional way. That's important if you have a very demanding boss who likes it when you write cool professional letters. So you can always write your letter proposal option and send it to ChatGPT and ask it to improve it. And in most cases, the boss will be satisfied. Well, we can check that further on with our colleagues. And you can see the example here. I had a dialogue with ChatGPT. I have this I have this habit of communicating with it, but not necessarily you can do that. But you can say, I've written a project proposal. I want to make sure if there are no mistakes, and here is the text, without asking whether you can help me or not. And you send this text to ChatGPT, and it helps. Next slide. This is another favorite topic. All of these topics are favorite, and this is budgeting and financial planning. Well, of course, ChatGPT cannot draft the budget for you, but it can help you to develop a comprehensive budget. Because you know that when we are writing an application, all of us are focused on the application, the activities, how we are going to do that, to add as much as possible there within a short deadline. But here we just take all of our activities, we send it to ChatGPT, and we ask it based on that to develop a budget structure with all the items and sub-items. So it is supposed to divide the costs into categories, assess financial resources, but of course, anyway, we need to have a financial manager who will check that. But all in all, when we have a lot of deadlines and a lot of tension in the context of preparing the applications, very often the budget is drafted on the very last night before you submit the project. So this may be very helpful for you not to forget anything. And regarding your questions, I can see your questions, but we will have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Next slide. Another favorite topic, and this is monitoring and evaluation. You know that donor organizations always insist and they request that we submit to them our monitoring and evaluation plans. And in larger organizations, that's often a separate unit that deal with monitoring and evaluation. But in most organizations, this is project manager or assistant to project manager. And thus, this is a very important part. And ChatGPT can help you there as well, based on the same principle as for budgeting. You take a project proposal. If you have it in place already, you copy the text. We ask ChatGPT to offer a structure to us based on our activities, and it provides the structure outline. If we want to do that just for training purposes, we can say that this is the project that we're going to implement. These are the activities, as I indicated in the example. Please indicate and develop an approximate plan for monitoring and evaluation. So it will not be a turnkey plan, but you will have already a certain outline and something to rely on, and you will see the light at the end of the tunnel. And of course, what I really like, there's questions regarding deliverables. Oh, I guess you know what deliverables are. I don't need to translate that. Outputs and outcomes, you know, I don't even know how to say that in Russian, but this is where ChatGPT can also be very helpful and cool. You can write in the chat if you know how to say deliverables, output and outcome in Russian. I will be very grateful for you there. And let's proceed with the next slide now. Oh, all of these items are the ones that I love because I've tried them all in practice and I like them all. And this is accompanying documents, cover documents. Thank you, Petro. So these are cover documents because we know that apart from project proposal, they often request that we submit cover documents. For example, CVs, organization profile, recommendation letters, and ChatGPT can give us feedback on these documents. If we have that in place already, we can send it to ChatGPT. We can ask it to analyze, to improve it, or even draft from scratch. For example, what is very helpful there, I have checked all of these options, all of these examples that I mentioned here. I tested them all with ChatGPT. So, for example, we need a resume, a CV for European Commission, and they have a certain structure. Canada, for example, they have a very particular structure. And we just ask ChatGPT to share with us the structure of this CV, the outline, based on requirements of the donor. Now, thank you, Andrei. Now I need to keep it in mind. And thus, so you can use that. Well, for cover documents, there are no strict rules. You can use that for recommendation letters for you personally if you are looking for a job, letters from your previous employers, or letters of support to the projects that you submit. That works cool. And I checked that a very demanding boss just came back with just one minor comment on my support letter. And all in all, ChatGPT was very efficient there. Next slide. We are approaching the end of the presentation, but not the end of our practice activity. Let me share a secret with you. This presentation, including examples and visuals, I prepared it with the help of ChatGPT. And of course, that helped me to reduce the time that I needed 2 times. But of course, I had still to do a lot of things because I have not yet inserted that into my Microsoft system, so it's a bit challenging. But in a lot of other aspects, ChatGPT has become an irreplaceable assistant, structuring the presentation, selecting the visuals, and selecting the examples. And now, in order to make our life easier, we just need to practice. Let's make the first step and try and register in ChatGPT system if you are not yet registered. Otherwise, we just enter and do some practice. So I will now send this link to the chat, the link to registration. Is it possible to enter using the telephone and the computer? Well, computer is easier, but you can also try the telephone. It works when you use the telephone, but it is more convenient to use the computer. You can follow the link. I will now share my screen.
Вот, если вы прошли по ссылке, вы попали вот на такую страничку. Кстати,
so if you follow the link, you can see this page. And by the way, now the interface is nicer. It used to be black. So if you already have a profile, we press login. Otherwise, we need to sign up. So I will try to use my alternative email to sign in to register. So you can create your account here. You can just proceed with Google, Microsoft account, or Apple, or whatever, or the Android system. And secondly, if you don't want to continue there, you can just register from scratch using your email. I will try to register with my second email. Let's think about a password.
Okay, we save the password. And yes, you'll get this message. It is important that your email really is valid so that you could actually use the system. Now I've received the message. I press yes, and I don't know, you can write whatever you want. I think no one will be like really checking that. Now you all know when I was born. Okay, it's not a big problem. Then you need to indicate to register your phone number. I will try to use the Ukrainian phone number for registration. I've checked that basically in all the countries the ChatGPT operates, because at some point it didn't work everywhere. Not in all countries. Only recently it started working in Ukraine, but I've tried everywhere, so it now works. And if not, you can always use VPN to join. It's not like very good, but for this tool, it's not bad to use that. You'll get a message to your phone Now you enter this code and you are in the system. Again, you can simplify it all. You can just enter using your Google account, and that will be probably easier. And this is, yes, the new chat. As I've said before, like we want to ask something, I will provide the example of the question that I had in my presentation already. And now we send the query and we get a response. So it's not like a silver bullet. You can change it. You can change the structure. You can simplify. You can ask it to reword something like please reword the goal of the project based on some context that you provide. Or give me some examples of something, and then you'll get it all in details, like, and you can ask for specific examples for particular points. You need to provide more details. I provided very general query. I get a very general answer. So the more specific your question is, the more specific will be your answer, and you can get it saved. You started, for example, this chat in this topic, and you continue. If you want another chat, you press new chat. Again, you write your question below and you get the answer. What's also important is that there is an option of upgrade to plus. That's a paid version. It costs $20 a month. But the only minus of ChatGPT right now is that if too many people enter the system in the hot time, it's more like about American time, not European time. But it may just not work. Yeah, you cannot enter unless someone exits. But with the paid version, you can always join it and use it. Second, there are a bit more functions that you can get, but for project management, that again is not very critical to use all the functions, because I doubt that we will like install some plugins right now in the Google ad in it. So that's a very thing that takes time, some hours to work on that and do things. Besides, there are many programs that are AI based that can help you with project management. But if you're interested in that, you can ask us about that. We can have a discussion about it. We'll have a discussion today about the further cooperation. So that's approximately how it all looks like. You can ask, you can ask it to translate whatever you want in any language you need. That there are also programs, some software developed by the same company, OpenAI. I've already mentioned that. It's about the pictures. You pay $15 and you get 115 options to create possibilities to create pictures. So if you're interested, if you need that, we can send the links to you with the presentation. You can play with that. And if you're an advanced user, there are programs to write the codes for the websites, but that's a more like complicated thing, serious work, but still it is possible. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm done with my part of the presentation and I'm giving the floor to Alexandra Vasilenko. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's very enlightening, especially I think for those of us who are learning for the first time about GPT chat, because it's like more of an introduction webinar and we are planning to discuss its functionalities in several key areas for the civil society organizations. Like we want to have a separate webinar about using the GPT chat to write the applications, about preparing the presentations and so on. We will come up with some more topics. So it's more like an introduction today, but I think some of us already have some like experience of using GPT chat, and I suggest that in parallel with the questions to our speaker, to Maria, maybe some would like to share your own experience, both positive or negative, some feedback, maybe, yeah, so that the colleagues would be interested. I would like to tell you a brief story about how I asked the GPT chat for a rating of the most popular social media in the ICA region. I needed it for a poll. I got a huge list, including the social media, where it indicated that it's very popular in China, and this is popular in Vietnam, and this is in Japan. Then I asked it, why do I get the countries of Southeastern Asia if I wanted for Central Asia? So you need to recheck it. And then it said, okay, I was not attentive. So, and it rewrote the answer. Also, once I asked for popular messengers and it proposed on the also popular social media and asked why is this answer if I asked only about messengers, and then he says, okay, so I'm sorry again, my mistake. So sometimes it feels like GPT chat is a sort of practicing student who has a lot of time but is not always an expert and not always responsible. So you need to check after it. But if you speak about processing large amounts of information, searching, then of course it's useful. That's my experience. Now I suggest that we switch to the questions to our speaker or to your comments. I will be happy to give the floor to whoever needs it. Please raise your hand or write in the chat, or just turn on the microphone, because we have a lot of people today and we might not be able to see who's got their hand raised. Okay, we have some question in the chat, Alia, already. Okay, nice. Let me read that when I find it, of course. Yeah, better you. Yes, I can see the questions. I've already answered one partially. So let me read how to analyze the arrays of data if the chat says that there is too much text entered, because that's what it answers, if I understand it correctly, right? Yeah, yeah. In fact, it may happen, and there has already been answered that if it's posted on the website, you can provide a link to the website and ask to analyze. I see this function. I know that people mention this quite often, but in the this function working with a link that does not work with the free version. I tried it yesterday, just in case no, it doesn't work. But there are other programs, other kinds of software based on AI that was created by Microsoft, and there you can do it. But of course, you need to pay for that. Again, it's not ChatGPT, which is free, yeah, unless you use a paid version, but you can use that. And I will provide you with with the names of those apps. You can read about that, whether you need it or not, actually, because those of you who write the scientific articles, you need to analyze huge amounts of data. Well, really, that's a cool thing for that. I have a lot of friends working in this area, they're doing research, and that's a totally useful tool for them. Small articles can be analyzed by ChatGPT. The question is how much of that text you can use. There are some limitations, but you can remove those as well. So I will write this question down, and together with the presentation, we will tell about how we can do so that you get a bit more in terms of request for ChatGPT than what it provides you initially. Yeah, there is another question similar to that about the text and tables, how you enter big amounts of information. The same. Again, I don't know how it works in the paid version because I don't have a paid version. I don't really need it right now. Well, it's sufficient for my tasks to have the free version. But talking about the tables and stuff like that, again, Microsoft, well, I will have to recheck that, because if you have a paid version of Microsoft option, maybe it works there already in the Microsoft Office from the very beginning. But if people are interested, I will just add it to the presentation with the descriptions and the links. Yeah, so I don't see other questions yet. If you see some. Yeah, we have a question. Ali, your microphone is off. I am really sorry. I was reading. Yeah, Andrei has raised his hand, please. Okay, hello guys, glory to Ukraine. So thank you very much for a very interesting topic. Yes, the Microsoft does have a product of this sort, and we need to mention that ChatGPT, OpenAI, doesn't provide links to the narrative that ChatGPT generates based on your request. And in the Microsoft app, it has it in it's a plugin to the Edge browser, so it has links, and the Bard creates the narrative based on your request. So that's the first thing I wanted to share. I totally agree that the paid version is redundant right now, considering the fact that Maria has mentioned that, yes. The speed of response is not really affected right now. So the usual version is very unpaid version is very good. And what else? There was a question about creating these abstracts from a big narrative. You can indicate the limit of words. I did that quite often. I used this option, so I indicated if the narrative is too long, I asked it to make an abstract of what ChatGPT produces, up to 100 words, up to one paragraph, and so on. So then it creates a conclusion that allows you to use it. And that's about it. So if there's anything else, I can write it in the chat. Yeah, thank you for sharing the experience. And I see the raised hand. Yulia has raised her hand. Yes, dear colleagues, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. And I would like to share some of my experience too. I use ChatGPT almost daily in my work, and basically it has become a very important assistant for me. It helps with simple tasks, like Maria has said, and yeah, it's always important for you to remember about it all the time, that that's the assistant that can save your time like a lot. Even the tasks that are routine and very well known to you, and you know that you will make that thing fast and you have sufficient knowledge, I still use ChatGPT to sort of make these tasks much faster. So it can help me to word some things I need to, like, you know, a letter maybe. I quite often use it as an editor, and I've had the experience of analyzing large amounts of data. For example, creating a country application, I had to produce high-level assumptions based on the activity categories, like high-level assumptions about the budget.
So I included this data into ChatGPT and asked it analyze. And instead of detailed categories or based on activities, I asked it to produce high-level categories. In this way, it analyzed the data and it helped me to reduce the time. So if while for analysis of this data in normal life, in order to present all of that, I would have needed a week because a lot of data was required. But With ChatGPT, it only took me 1.5 days. So it was really irreplaceable. And also it is very cool if you need the options for proposals. You need to keep in mind that if it doesn't come up with a good proposal at the first attempt, you have the opportunity to generate several answers to your request. You can press the generate another answer, and out of 6 answers to your one query, you can compose and create a cool version. As Maria mentioned, when preparing the budget, you may miss some details when developing the categories of costs, which often happens because when you come up with an extensive budget, you may lose some details, or in order to just check oneself. ChatGPT offers cool ideas to be included into budget costs and so on and so forth. So here, the main thing is practice. Sometimes I had fights with ChatGPT and it offered not what I expected. Then it would say sorry and come up with a good option. I tried to register for various other AI applications, as Andrei mentioned. I tried that, but frankly speaking, it didn't work for me. I didn't manage to register. Well, some of these developments are not accessible for Ukraine, for example. Some had problems with registration because my phone did not connect properly and so on and so forth. So for me, ChatGPT remains the only easily accessible assistant with whom I haven't had problems as with other applications. It's important to mention that I use a paid version. I bought it. I don't see a significant difference, frankly speaking, but for that now it quickly generates the answers because I needed to generate extensive amounts of information, large amounts of text, and I was very resentful when ChatGPT took a lot of time to generate the answers. Well, it was fast enough, but I needed to do it even faster because I had a lot of extensive amount of work. So I bought a paid version. As I mentioned, I don't see a lot of differences. It has a lot of functions that I have not yet had time to explore, but for what I have mentioned, that I use it as a text editor to analyze large big data, and also we used it to develop several proposals, and this can be presented in more detail further on. This requires a separate webinar. To me, it is very helpful, and I'm very grateful to the developers for this opportunity. Thank you. Thank you, Yulia, for having shared the experience, and colleagues. We are already a bit over time. That is why I suggest that we very quickly take one more question. And after that, please stay. We will come up with a very interesting announcement and an offer proposal from European TB Coalition to you all. Arseniy. And otherwise, if you have questions, comments, please write in the chat. Hello, on my part, this is rather a comment, not so much a question. This is to avoid further issues. It was mentioned that if there is a certain donor and to ask to indicate the name of the donor and to ask for compliance with the donor's requirements. I believe this is not quite adequate. It's better to include the link and paste requirements of the donor, because ChatGPT may come up with irrelevant requirements of the donor, and there may be a lot of problems there. So it's better to indicate not just the general information, but a concrete text and concrete reference. So this is something that really works sometimes not quite correctly. So it works, but the question is about the architecture of the system. So if the architecture of the website is not convenient for GPT analysis, then it won't be adequate. If it is just a large article, large paper written in the textual format, then it is possible to easily analyze that. And well, this is the aspect that I wanted to highlight. Then regarding the paid version, this is not so much even about the speed of response or if it is available or not, because if we use European time, sometimes traffic may be very high in some periods, but this is about access to the newest model, not 3.5, but 4.0. And there they added some functions and elements that are not that obvious to us, but the quality of answers is higher because this is about a new generation that takes into account all the previous experience that was developed with the users. So speaking about whether it is used or not, this is something that can be discussed, but this is quite an accessible amount of funds, and I recommend to use premium version because it will definitely be beneficial. Thank you for your comment. As we mentioned, in the future, we plan several more webinars to focus on GPT chat, and we could focus on use of the paid version during one of those webinars. Now let us take a look at this great picture that we came across by chance before the webinar, and let's try to avoid the situations. European Coalition for Fighting TB came up with the initiative. We plan in the next 1 month or 1.5 months, several of our organizations from the European WHO region. Unfortunately, we cannot now cover the other regions. We plan to undertake mentorship project for representatives of organizations to work on the practice of using GPT chats together, how to use it in various aspects of your work. Ideally, we would like to work with representatives of NGOs who will be in the position to further on roll out that experience in their organizations and share it with the colleagues. If you are interested in this initiative, please leave your emails in the chat, and next week we will contact you and we will discuss how we organize this activity. Thank you, and thank you, Olesya. We can remove the picture, and of course we will share the recording and all the materials of the webinar with the registered users, registered participants of the webinar. We will also send you the link to the recording on all resources of the European Coalition. On behalf of the team, I'm grateful to Maria for this outstanding presentation. This is a very relevant topic. We are grateful to the interpreters who have helped us to make this information available in 2 languages. And sorry for the delay. And thank you, dear participants, for that you keep your interest in new technologies. We are always ready to help, and please come up with your questions. And if there are any, we are always ready to consider your queries, relevance of some themes, to include them into our further webinars. And if you are not yet tired, please activate your videos. We will take a photo of today's event. It's so nice to see you. Thank you for having done that. It's great when you can see eyes, people's eyes. Let us take a couple of screenshots and you will see yourself. I believe that now it is it for today. Thank you all. And I believe that our webinar is over here, and see you next time. Thank you.
Спасибо. Спасибо.